Arkebe, it's a pleasure to meet you. Our business in farming had a tagline called Made in Africa, and I got your book last year, and the two of them matched. So it's a privilege for me. First question I want to know, how has Ethiopia stood against the pressure to not privatize state-owned enterprises and be able to intervene in the economy to support the country?
What Ethiopia tried to do is to ensure that enterprises which were state-owned but which do not have strategic relevance are privatized and passed to private investors. And so far Ethiopia had privatized about 300 firms. And Ethiopia also strengthened some key state-owned enterprises. For instance, Ethiopian Airlines is one state-owned enterprise which is 100% state-owned. The government is not interested in doing, repeating what the private sector can do. So the main focus is to ensure that the government or state-owned enterprises play a strategic role, not being addressed by the private sector. So we have critical state-owned enterprises, for instance, in electricity sector. We have a utility distributor and also a utility company involved in power generation. We have a state-owned telecom company. We have a commercial bank, which is the largest bank in Ethiopia, and also Development Bank of Ethiopia. We have also a few in productive sectors. So the critical criteria we use is whether there is a strategic need for a state-owned enterprise. When the private starts to play a role, then the state-owned enterprise will leave the space as it could be addressed by the private sector. And we believe there is an important role for state-owned enterprises. And we are also quite careful that we don't carry inefficient state-owned enterprises. We have to ensure that state-owned enterprises could compete internationally, and they have to be exposed to international competition, and they should also have a good corporate governance system as well. And this is absolutely important. The government, for instance, has been quite careful in ensuring the autonomy of state-owned enterprises like Ethiopian Airlines. So the corporate governance issue is quite critical.
Let me just pick the question of telephone sector and the issue of liberalization and efficiencies that come with opening it up. One of the questions I sent you said, are you not able to raise money even when you privatize the telecom sector so that the cost of doing business is low for the private sector rather than keeping the government full ownership?
Yeah, the main reason on telecom business is currently Ethiopia is building a network of railway system, and this requires huge investment. And we are using the revenue we generate from telecom to use it to be used as a resource for construction of railways. But it's not the only reason. There is a second reason. The private companies will mainly target markets where it's lucrative, and this is fair and justifiable. But Ethiopia is quite a huge country. We have 100 million population, 1.1 million square kilometers. So the rural area requires connectivity, and you have to expand and improve the connectivity, not because it's profitable, but because it has to be connected as it's critical for poverty reduction, as a social service. So that's why the government is not, it has been quite active in expanding the rural connectivity as well. These are the two major reasons. And in terms of quality, we believe that because the telecom business is state-owned doesn't mean that it has to be inefficient. And the Ethiopian telecom system is an average performer, although it may not be the best performing company. And in terms of connectivity, Currently, the mobile users are more than 60 million, so it's expanding while also improving the quality of service.
Okay. Let's go straight to agriculture, because my background is farming. In your book, you speak about a project at Ziwe, which is a wine project that began in 2014. And 750 young people, but only one person is from France. How are you able to do that? You want skills transfer, but at the same time you can restrict foreign workers into a sector. How did you do it?
In fact, we don't have much restriction on foreign specialists and expatriates. We even have incentives to companies who would like to bring technologists or specialists. So, for instance, in some of the key priority sectors oriented to export, we allow up to 5 years zero income tax on the expatriates. This is to encourage. So the best way we believe will help skill development to be accelerated is by encouraging specialists and also attracting talents. So the fact is that the company was able to use only one expatriate. They could easily get 749 Ethiopians quite good at the work, and they didn't need, and that is the main reason. And in fact, one of the CEOs of this, the CEO of this group, he told me that in other African countries they had to bring many expatriates from France, and he was mentioning in Ethiopia in their brewery industry and as well as winery, they find competent and qualified Ethiopians locally. And this is the same, this is true with other companies as well. We have Share Ethiopia, which is the largest floriculture company in Ethiopia, Share Ethiopia, and it has employed close to 15,000. And there is no single expatriate except the owners. At the early stage, there were many Indians and also Kenyan expatriates coming because the industry was new. But now there are many Ethiopian graduates from horticulture, specializing in horticulture, graduating from universities, and they have been able to develop the skills as farm managers, production managers, and Ethiopians have been quite quick to learn.
So your strategy is attracting anchor companies because small subsistence agriculture can't scale. So you look out for the big ones who you tie smaller ones to and then add value through processing.
In terms of agriculture, we are following two strategies. One is agricultural transformation of the smallholder farmer. So we have extension services, we have different interventions in terms of improved seed, improved technology, and also introducing conservation of water and soil methods to improve productivity of the farmers. The second aspect is we have the large farms and companies who are involved in the modern agriculture sector, and we usually try that they are linked with outgrower system to ensure that there is good linkage in the sector. So both ways are the approaches. Yeah.
Okay, let's just go to energy. 3 cents per kilowatt hour. How are you able to raise money for all these huge infrastructure projects, bilateral, multilateral, private placements, yet it's not very easy for African countries? How do you do it?
First, we recognize that investment in energy is quite critical for a country focusing or aiming at economic transformation and industrialization. So that is the first step. And for each African government of African country, the key issue is, will it consider energy as strategic area or not? And we believe it should give special attention to energy. And we are using multiple ways of financing. One is we use financing from through bilateral agreements, like financing from Exim banks of different countries. Secondly, we also look at accessing financing institutions. Thirdly, we also mobilize local resources and budget allocation from Treasury. We don't have, but we raise from the financial market. We sell Eurobond, and we try to mobilize resources. So we are trying to diversify in multiple areas, and the requirement is quite significant. The local mobilization element is also playing a much more important role, as currently we are building the Grand Renaissance Dam on the River Nile, based entirely mobilized from local resources.
I just want to combine these two questions, the leather industry and the backward linkages with inputs. Uganda has 15 million cows, heads of cattle. We have only one processing plant for beef. It can't raise 250 cows a day. How are you able to be successful in leather? Yet I know the reproductive capability of Ethiopian cows is not very high compared to UK or New Zealand. How do you do it?
We don't consider we have done excellent job in the leather sector. We consider that is an area that requires improved management of the sector, and the leather sector is linked with the livestock development because skin and hide is a byproduct, and the main livestock is mainly the meat that is a critical product you will get from cattle, but hide and skin, which is relevant for leather sector, is usually byproduct. So we are looking on how to improve our policies in this respect, and currently we are attracting many new companies in the meat industry. Large players in global meat industry are investing in Ethiopia, which will be linked with fattening and improved cattle management. And this will allow us to have also good quality of skin and hide for the leather sector. And the market opportunity globally for leather products, including footwear, is also quite significant. So I believe in the coming few years, we'll have a significant progress in this sector as well.
Speak about policy. In your book, you write a lot about the lack of industrial policy in Africa, in many countries in Africa, hindering manufacturing. Yeah? What are the just three summarized ingredients of a successful industrial policy from your perspective?
Yeah, the first thing is you must have a sectoral focus. You must have key priority sectors. You can't focus on every sector, and you have to focus on the key priority sectors, which do have the biggest linkage effect on the overall the economy. The second one is manufacturing sector, or the key priorities require significant support and nurturing. So putting in place policy instruments is very, very important. Providing incentive to key priority sectors, focusing on export, and also building some institutions which are critical. This is the second intervention required. Third would be currently we consider industrial parks as a critical component of our industrial policy. In many African countries, it has been looked at industrial parks are considered as ultimate goal. Industrial parks should be considered as a means to industrialize, as a component of industrial policy. So I believe the three could be important areas of intervention.
About green manufacturing. Why are you concerned with green manufacturing when our concern in Africa is more young people coming out of universities? Not that green is bad, but that we are not in the top league of polluters in Africa. We're not anywhere near. Why don't you let us have factories first, and then we can think about green,
yes,
like China?
The issue is we only have one planet, be it the poor or the wealthy, or the polluters or the polluted, we only have one planet. And we have to think beyond, after 20 or 30 years, as China and India did. If the industrial sector is going to be significant, the impact on the environment will be much bigger. But the issue is we have always considered that the most vulnerable society because of climate change is Africa. We contribute less than 4% to greenhouse emission, but we are the ones negatively affected, particularly agriculture. And we need to adapt a sustainable way of doing production, because it's also going to be a source of, it's going to be a source of competitive advantage. It doesn't necessarily mean that in the short term it may be a much more expensive process, but in the long term, having sustainable development principles is quite economical. For instance, companies can save resources, can have lean manufacturing. Introducing these management systems may be expensive at the beginning, but in the long term they become quite competitive. So we consider that building a green economy is very important to sustain growth.
Tell me about speed. Africa, in Uganda and many countries, the right policy prescription is there, but the weakness is execution, is implementation. Now, everything I've read about you and I've heard is speed, speed, speed. How are you able to do an industrial park in 9 months? What do you do to get everybody to move in the same direction?
Yeah, the first thing is we don't have the luxury of time. We have a youth that is desperately looking for decent jobs. And this is a very important factor. We need to accelerate growth because the international environment is harsh. You have either to survive and be able to be competitive. So we have to move faster. And here's the critical issue we believe that we are able to move is, first is clarity, having clarity of vision and having clarity of policy. So we usually try to look and study other countries, how it's being done. And we also try to execute and implement pilot projects. Once we learn from the piloting, we can then accelerate into other similar models and scale up. So this is a critical issue for all African countries, because economic growth is linked with time. What matters is not being able to achieve GDP growth rate per year. It all depends whether you are able to catch up in few decades or in many centuries. I don't think we have the luxury to stay for many centuries. We need at least to catch up in the coming few decades.
Okay, just tell me about public-private sector partnership. If you have forums, yesterday you spoke about being able to attract 3 high-value chain companies in the apparel sector. You do it yourself as government, you hire consultants. Have you built the skill within your investment sector to be able to attract those? Communication, design, packaging, who does that for you?
We are making a combination of efforts. First, we are improving our approach to investment. So we have now an approach that is targeted on key sectors, targeted on specific companies we need to identify. Secondly, we also use the firms as a source of learning. So we engage, we have series of discussions, we try to understand about their business. So we are trying to catch up and know about the industry. And government can only learn about the industry from the industrial leaders. And then we try to dialogue, we try to engage, we try to relate with the vision we have, the policy we have. So through this mechanism, we are making some progress, and where a lot of learning also awaits us, and we are quite committed to learn.
As we conclude this interview, I just want to know, you are mayor of Addis for 5 years. Cities in Africa have about 50-60% of the GDP of countries. You've been in Kampala, you've spent some time here. What can you prescribe for us as a city to be able to get to the Addis standard?
In fact,
have you seen that?
I didn't have much chance to look at the city, and I had met the minister for Kampala metropolitan, but I didn't have time to observe. The key issue is, for me, every city government should put economic agenda as key priority. Creation of jobs is quite important. Attracting firms is quite important. Secondly, cities also need to provide good services to its citizens. So addressing the main social service agendas is second priority. Third priority would be mobilizing the citizens of the city, the private sector. So this partnership would be important for any African city, but I cannot give specific comment about Kampala.